Thérèse Raquin lost her mother at an early age, so her father decided to send her to be raised by his sister. As he left, he promised Thérèse that he would take her with him to Africa at the first opportunity. Madame Raquin turned out to be a very strict and domineering woman who demanded absolute obedience to her rules. The girl counted the days until her father's return, but Madame Raquin told her not to hope for it, as her brother never kept his promises. However, Thérèse continued to believe, all while being forced to live by her aunt's rules and care for her sickly cousin, Camille. Many years passed, but nothing changed. Camille was still constantly ill, and Thérèse continued to look after him. One evening Madame Raquin told her niece that she was Camille's guardian angel. The young woman liked to watch the local guy. This handsome and strong young man stirred deep emotions within her. In an attempt to suppress them, Thérèse asked Camille to kiss her. He gave her a kiss on the cheek, though she had meant something quite different. Madame Raquin handed Thérèse a letter from Africa. It turned out that her father had drowned off the coast of Algeria. There was little money left from what he had sent for her upkeep, so Madame Raquin needed to come up with a solution urgently. And so Thérèse was left an orphan. Soon Camille made an announcement. Thanks to an old friend of his mother's, he had found a job as a clerk in Paris, so they were moving. Camille believed that his mother had spoiled him with her excessive care, and now he wanted to take responsibility for their small family. Thérèse was completely taken aback when she learned that Camille intended to marry her with his mother's approval. She had no right to refuse. She was an illegitimate child with an unfortunate fate. The chance to get married was a true stroke of luck for her. After some time as planned, the family moved to Paris, a grey and dirty city. This was not the life Thérèse had dreamed of. Along with her niece and now daughter-in-law, Madame Raquin planned to open a shop. Camille disliked the space, finding it dark and unremarkable, but Madame Raquin, full of enthusiasm, was certain they would succeed. Looking out the window at the grey streets, Thérèse felt unbearable despair. Camille worked as a clerk in an office, sorting through paperwork all day. By evening he had no energy left to spend time with his young wife. Unexpectedly, a figure from their past appeared in their lives, Laurent the clerk, who worked in the same office as Camille. Madame Raquin warmly welcomed the young man, inviting him to stay for dinner and to join their Thursday domino evenings. Thérèse felt her heart pounding wildly. Laurent told everyone about his passion for painting and how his father had left him penniless upon discovering it. Since then, they had not spoken, and Laurent had abandoned painting, as he had to earn a living. Thérèse felt short of breath and tried to open the window. Camille asked his wife what was wrong. Thérèse said she didn't like Laurent because he smelled like an animal. But in truth it was not hatred but attraction. She wished she could pose for Laurent, as his many models had before. But now Laurent was painting Camille. Madame Raquin was eager to see the painting, but Laurent refused to show it until it was finished. Thérèse found herself trapped in her tangled emotions, forced to suppress them. Soon Camille's portrait was completed. Madame Raquin admired it and suggested celebrating with champagne. When Thérèse and Laurent were alone, passion suddenly ignited between them. From then on, they began meeting in secret. During the day, Thérèse worked in the shop with Madame Raquin and seized every free moment to see Laurent. At the same time, Laurent continued to befriend Camille, who remained completely unaware. Thérèse felt no guilt because she had never felt wanted in this family. She had even tried to run away twice, but Madame Raquin always told her she wouldn't survive without them. And Thérèse had believed her. This time she joined the Thursday domino game. The romantic tension between her and Laurent was growing. Completely unafraid of being caught, they met right under Madame Raquin's nose. Thérèse would often lock herself in her room with Laurent, claiming to have a migraine and asking Madame not to disturb her. Every time she begged Laurent to save her. At night, Thérèse couldn't sleep. Camille woke up from a nightmare, drenched in cold sweat, and was surprised to see his wife awake. Thérèse said that sometimes she liked looking out the window at night, but Camille sensed that she was hiding something. Her passionate affair with Laurent continued. Deep down, Thérèse still hated him because he could leave her at any moment. One day Camille confided in Laurent that he didn't know how to make Thérèse happy, as it was obvious she was miserable in Paris. Laurent advised his friend to simply love her. However, no matter how hard Camille tried, he couldn't ignite passion in his wife. His breathing problems were partly to blame. Thérèse wished she could marry Laurent. That day they were so careless that Madame Raquin almost caught them. That evening Camille announced to his wife that they were returning to Vernon. Living in Paris was taking too much of a toll on both his and her health. Camille thought so because his mother had mentioned Thérèse's daily headaches. The girl tried to argue, but Camille had already made up his mind. He didn't care that they had a business in Paris. He would rather start over. Thérèse barely held back her emotions, and at the first opportunity ran to her lover. She even wished her husband dead, just to be with the one she truly loved forever. Laurent said that an accident could happen to Camille. Such things occur every day, and no one would suspect anything. Feeling confused, Thérèse said she had to go. Before the door closed, Laurent asked her if she belonged to him. Thérèse answered yes. She lay awake all night, thinking about how much better her life would be without her husband. The next day on Sunday, the couple and Laurent went for a walk in the woods. After walking 2 miles, Camille felt unbearably tired and dozed off on his wife's lap. Because of his illness, he had no physical endurance. Taking advantage of Camille's sleep, Thérèse and Laurent wanted to amuse themselves a little, but they were interrupted by Madame Raquin's friends, who were also walking in the woods. The group planned to go boating, and Thérèse, Laurent, and Camille decided to join them. One look at Laurent was enough for Thérèse to understand what he was planning. She still wasn't sure if she was ready to go through with it, but as if hypnotized she got into the boat. As Laurent rowed, Thérèse remained silent. Camille had no idea of their true intentions. They were surrounded by peaceful landscapes and the quiet of a Sunday afternoon. Seeing the newlyweds' boat overturn, everyone rushed to help. Thérèse desperately called out for her husband, but he was beyond saving. Later, Laurent told everyone that Camille had been dancing in the boat, causing it to tip over. His body had yet to be found. The witnesses of this supposed accident immediately decided to inform Madame Raquin. Laurent whispered to Thérèse that there was no turning back now. She had to be strong. Upon learning that her son had drowned, Madame Raquin burst into hysterical sobs. Volunteers searched the lake for the body. Thérèse didn't know what to feel. Soon the body was found. When Laurent saw it, he vomited. The funeral took place. Laurent embraced Thérèse, whispering that if he had to, he would do it again. Late at night, the lovers met. Now nothing and no one could stand in their way. Madame Raquin was inconsolable. Her entire life had revolved around caring for her son, and now everything had lost its meaning. Nightmares tormented her. Thérèse found it unbearable to listen but had to endure it, playing the role of a grieving widow. Madame Raquin began blaming Thérèse, saying she had failed to look after Camille, even though she was supposed to be his guardian angel. Over and over, the woman asked Thérèse why she had let him die. Later, Madame Raquin apologized repeatedly, saying that she didn't truly blame her. It was only grief speaking, the sorrow of losing her only son. All the family friends are doing their best to support them. The only advice they can offer the unfortunate woman is to stop thinking of Camille as a martyr. Madame Raquin is grateful to everyone for their support, especially Laurent. Thérèse must stay by her aunt's side now, no matter how much she longs to be with Laurent all the time. Nightmares have begun to torment her as well. In the middle of the night Laurent came to her, tired of waiting. After all they had done this for one reason, to live together. Thérèse begged Laurent to run away with her tonight, but he refused, saying that doing so would arouse suspicion and lead them straight to the guillotine. Upon learning that the shop and the bank account were in Madame Raquin's name and that Camille had nothing, Laurent's expression immediately changed. Through the window Suzanne, a close friend of Madame Raquin, saw them together. As Laurent hurried away, he bumped into her. Madame Raquin hugged crying Thérèse in her arms, while Laurent offered to walk Suzanne home. 8 months had passed since Camille's death. Everyone noticed Thérèse fading away and believed it was due to loneliness. Madame Raquin's friends were convinced that Thérèse should remarry, perhaps to Laurent. That would be a more respectful tribute to Camille's memory than if she were to marry someone else. Madame Raquin agreed. Thérèse discovered that Laurent had another woman. He assured her that it was over, it had been nothing more than a fleeting affair, he didn't even remember her name. Madame Raquin declared that she was ready to give her blessing for Thérèse and Laurent's marriage. But Thérèse was no longer sure. Laurent however promised to be a good husband, holding her hands insistently. Soon the wedding took place in a church. Madame Raquin announced that she had changed her will, including both Thérèse and Laurent in it. After her death, the shop and 20,000 francs in the bank would belong to them. Pleased, Laurent suggested they celebrate. From then on, he lived with Thérèse and Madame Raquin. Laurent did not like that a portrait of Camille, painted by his own hand, hung in their marital bedroom. It seemed that the newlyweds should be happy, their dream of being together had come true. But Thérèse was tormented by guilt. She could not stop thinking about the last moments of her husband's life. The memories of that fateful day were still fresh. Laurent assured his wife that Camille had neither struggled nor suffered. But Thérèse knew that was a lie. She had heard Camille calling for her help. Hearing the newlyweds' shouts from their room, Madame Raquin grew worried. Did they have something to hide? In short, the wedding night did not go as planned. All day long Thérèse remained in melancholy, sleeping a lot. Madame Raquin shared her concerns with Suzanne. Soon the family went on a picnic. Madame Raquin still could not come to terms with the loss of her son. Every time she turned around, she expected to see Camille. Suddenly unable to bear her grief, Madame Raquin collapsed. Thérèse and Laurent called for a doctor, saying that Madame Raquin could barely move and had lost her speech. All the doctor could advise was to do everything possible to ease her condition. Now Thérèse and Laurent were forced to take care of Madame Raquin, who was suffering the consequences of a stroke. On the other hand, the sooner Madame Raquin died, the sooner they would receive the money. Thérèse grew increasingly disturbed by her husband's behavior. He no longer even tried to hide his true intentions. Madame Raquin understood everything but could tell no one. One day, as Thérèse was helping her aunt take a bath, Laurent grabbed his wife, threw her out of the bathroom and locked the door. Thérèse screamed at Laurent, saying that he was the one who had taken Camille's life, while he insisted that they had done it together. Thérèse managed to save Madame Raquin, preventing her from drowning in the tub, but what now? How were they supposed to go on? One day Thérèse got drunk and wandered into the meat market. She felt far more monstrous than any of the butchers there. Madame Raquin's friends regularly visited her. They came up with the idea that she could form words from letters. Barely moving her hand, the woman spelled out Thérèse and Laurent, but she lacked the strength for the final, most important word. No one in the room even suspected what Thérèse and Laurent had truly done. When Madame Raquin began to cry, everyone assumed it was out of gratitude. Laurent played the role of the caring son-in-law well. Thérèse can no longer endure it. When the girl felt pain in her abdomen, Suzanne suspected that Thérèse was pregnant. This house is steeped in lies and terrible secrets. Taking advantage of the moment when Thérèse and Laurent were distracted, Madame Raquin tried to grab paper and ink, but Thérèse stopped her. Thérèse hates her aunt, who had practically sold her into marriage. Or is she just trying to justify herself this way? That night, Thérèse and Laurent indulged themselves and drank heavily. When all the guests had finally left late at night, Laurent wanted tenderness from his wife, but instead she struck him. Thérèse woke up with a terrible hangover by the river. Meanwhile, Laurent bought hydrocyanic acid, supposedly to poison the rats. Thérèse's life turned into a daily nightmare. Suzanne decided to visit her old friend and saw a message written in ink on the floor, exposing Thérèse and Laurent. She ran to get help. At that moment, Thérèse also noticed the message and began to plead with Madame Raquin for forgiveness through tears. Laurent ordered his wife to get up from her knees. Now Thérèse only wanted it all to be over. Someone entered, but it was only Madame Raquin's friend, Olivier, who had come to greet her. Barely keeping her composure, Thérèse said that Madame Raquin was sleeping, and Olivier left. Laurent and Thérèse took Madame Raquin in her wheelchair to the river while Suzanne brought the police to the shop. But no one was there. Suddenly Thérèse offered her husband some wine. While he was pouring it into glasses, she took out a knife. Laurent realized what his beloved intended to do, but he had another proposal. He had added the poison to the wine. This way they could leave more painlessly. Laurent drank first, and Thérèse followed his example. All of it happened in front of Madame Raquin. The couple kissed for the last time. They died in each other's arms. By the time the police arrived, it was too late. Such was the price of forbidden love. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.